We are seeing this legislation being billed as the anti-TikTok bill. That's really not about TikTok. It's about freedom of speech.
Can you actually explain that, Bill?
Yes. This is another, I guess the bottom line up front is this is another piece of legislation being expedited through Congress with strong bipartisan support in the name of national security interests that is essentially a power grab and an assault on freedom and liberty. And I'll just say this in I think probably like the top three things that they're not actually telling us that's in the bill. Freedom of speech. It's our ability to be able to express ourselves, whether it be in person, on a podcast, on a social media platform, in a newspaper, whatever the platform may be. This legislation gives the executive the power to decide which platforms are acceptable for us to be able to use. TikTok itself, the words TikTok is not actually in the bill, but it gives the power to the president to decide who is a foreign adversary single-handedly, no consultation with or agreement from members of Congress or anyone else. It actually gives the power to a cabinet secretary to designate who is a foreign adversary. And if a social media platform has at least 20% ownership in a social media platform, that platform may be banned from doing business in America, essentially. But it's not just a foreign state actor that could be named as a foreign adversary. It also includes a line in the legislation that if, let's say, a person has at least 25% financial interest or ownership in a social media platform, they're an American citizen who may be working or living in some other country, or working or living here, but doing business with other countries. If the executive branch of our government decides that this individual is under the influence of or controlled by someone that they deem a foreign adversary, then that platform must not do business in America. And that person, obviously, even an American citizen, is banned from conducting that business. They must divest, essentially. So when you look at, and this is where there's been a lot of chatter around this, when you look at Elon Musk, for example, well, you already have people in the Biden administration, even President Biden himself, implying that Elon Musk's activities need to be investigated. Well, he is someone with Tesla who does business in a lot of countries, including China, and therefore he must be investigated. It is not at all a stretch of imagination to say that X could be the next platform that the executive branch decides, nope, we've designated this person to be a foreign adversary, and therefore his business interest cannot be allowed for this social media platform, cannot be allowed to exist. We've seen this already with people accusing him and X of interfering in our elections. Again, it's ironic that it's coming from the Democratic Party that they are claiming that a guy who has said himself he's committed to free speech and is allowing free speech on his platform and is not allowing the federal government to manipulate his platform by deeming which accounts are okay to post their content and which accounts are not because of disinformation or whatever they claim it to be. It's not an accident that the social media platforms that have been proven to take action at the behest of the federal government and the White House to censor certain voices, they're not included with or being targeted at all in this legislation or outside of it. Yet other platforms that are not cooperating or collaborating somehow are. So the underlying issue here, this is being sold as TikTok and national security, but ultimately, even as Ron Paul said, this is legislation that's the greatest assault on liberty since the Patriot Act was passed.
Yeah, it's quite dark that this is just the grab for power.
It is.
I mean, it's not just with Elon, it's probably with Zuck, with Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. It puts pressure. It's not just about banning, but it puts pressure for them to kind of moderate behavior.
Yes.
Which is a slippery slope. Of course, it's a beautiful dance of power because you don't want tech companies to have too much power either, or individuals at the top of those tech companies have too much power. But then, do you want that power in the hands of government?
No.
The history of this nation is a fascinatingly effective journey towards the balance of power, and it does seem like this sneaky little thing. As much as I hate TikTok on all fronts, my brain rots every time I use TikTok. I know it's also like the national security dangers of China and so on, but it's just like TikTok, man. I don't know. It's so addicting. It's so addicting. So when I first saw this TikTok bill, I was like, yes, on all fronts. But then they got me. The Trojan horse got me. No,
they all, and and this is like the Social Dilemma documentary, I think exposed a lot that there is so much, there's so much that these algorithms do in these various social media platforms, that's problematic, to say the least. Data security and privacy is a serious issue. These are serious things. And so let's have a conversation about these serious things, and cease these attempts to try to have our government try to tell us what we are and aren't allowed to see, where we are and aren't allowed to say what we want to say. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, more and more trust people to, whenever social media companies do bullshitty things, for the people to make documentaries about it, to discover it, for great journalists to do great journalism,
right,
and to find the flaws and the hypocrisy and the call for transparency, all those kinds of things. I don't trust in most cases government regulation of technology companies because they seem to be really out of touch.
Yeah.
They want power.
Yeah.
They're really intimidated by the power that the tech companies have. And two, they don't seem to get at the technology at all. So they're like hindering innovation, and they're just greedy for power.
Yeah.
And those are
it's
not
a bad combination.
It's a bad combination.
And the thing here too, though, is this extends far beyond social media companies. This is a very specific example, but it's one example of many how those who are greedy for power are continuing to try to find ways to tell us how to live our lives. They are increasingly trying to tell us, again, what we're allowed to see and hear, whether it be social media companies or what shows up in a Google search engine, for example. And if they're not finding a willing and compliant social media company or big tech company, then they're looking for ways to reach their hand into those tech companies and force compliance. But in the age of disinformation, misinformation, hate speech, all of the excuses that are given for government, either directly or indirectly through big tech, to try to censor certain voices, it really undermines the truth, which is the way to defeat bad speech is with better speech and more speech. Whether it's hate speech or things that you might be offended by or things that you might disagree with, the answer is not to have some entity with the power of censorship and being the quote unquote authority to decide what is good speech and acceptable and what is bad speech and unacceptable. It's what you said. Let's encourage this debate and encourage people who are inspired by no, man, I saw this thing or this thing is happening and it's pissing me off. So I'm going to bring a superior argument. I'm going to show what the right way is. And gosh, this is what our founders envisioned for us as a society in this country. And we would be so much stronger with a more engaged people and a more informed people if we had this and had it supported.
Do you think, what are the chances that the TikTok ban bill passes?
The way that it passed through the House of Representatives with such an overwhelming bipartisan support and so quickly, and President Biden saying that if it comes across his desk, he'll sign it. I thought it would pass through very quickly. I'm only slightly encouraged by the fact that the Senate at least appears to be saying, hey, there are serious free speech concerns around this bill, serious civil liberties concerns around this bill. We need to do our due diligence. I won't say I'm cautiously optimistic because I understand how that place works, but their pause at least gives people the opportunity to continue to kind of sound the alarm and for people to call their senators and express their concerns with this that are very real, valid concerns.
Yeah, this is really messed up. Just in case we didn't make it clear, I think this is really, really big danger if this thing passes. Even if you hate Elon Musk or you're whatever, this is really, really, really dangerous. If the government gets say over the platforms on which we communicate with each other, it's a huge problem.
And there's a section in there as well. Just kind of the last piece on this is if you use a VPN and you try to use a VPN to access this, you could have problems with the law. And you take that a step further and say, well, how would they know? There's a surveillance aspect to that. So once you start peeling back the layers of this really toxic onion, it really leads seriously to a pretty dark and dangerous and oppressive place.